Hey everybody, it's me, Kyle, and you probably already know that there's Vietnamese people all over the world. But did you know there's some living in Ireland? Yeah, so today I'm going to introduce you to somebody who's new to the channel, and maybe you'll see more of her in the future. Una-Minh, welcome, welcome. It's such a pleasure to meet you. Uh, we
Thanks so much,
just
Kyle.
we just unofficially met online just a few days ago, and right away I'm like, yeah, come on to this thing. I'm doing it. I'm doing it. I want to talk to you because I think you have a very interesting life.
Oh, thanks very much. I mean, to be honest, what happened was someone reached out randomly and they said to me, "Have you seen this guy Kyle's videos? They're really, really good, and you're adopted as well. So he goes all those down those adoption routes." And I was like, "Yeah, yeah, okay, cool." And then I was like, I get sent a lot of things, so it was kind of like, okay, I'll watch it in my own time. But as soon as I got onto your channel, like seriously, man, I was like binging all of them. It was great. It was such a kind of a relief as well to kind of trawl through everything with that backlog of content. So thank you.
No, no, no. Thank you for reaching out to me. I love hearing from Vietnamese people all over the world, and Ireland. It definitely has a place in my heart for sure. I mean, I've been there. It's such a I don't know. It's such a like a laid back type of a place, but you can have the city vibe if you want. You can party if you want, and you can just drive around the Ring of Kerry and all that. So, um, tell me about where you're from exactly.
Yeah, so I was adopted from Hanoi in 91. So I was very young, and it was quite unusual, I think, at the time to be adopted that young because my adopted mother met me when I was 3 days old, and I was in Ireland when I was 6 weeks old. So it's like a pretty fast turnaround process. Now, I don't know what it's like these days. I would imagine it's a bit more stricter because there were a lot of, like, Ireland closed its doors to Vietnam for a while because there was a lot of controversy with that. And since then, I've been just living here. I've been back to Vietnam though about 5 times, I think, but it's always been, I suppose, a very different experience for me because, like, I know obviously Kyle, you speak Vietnamese, but I don't. So for me, it's like, anytime I visited Vietnam, it was like they would be talking to me in Vietnamese, and I'm like, I haven't a clue what you're saying, and then they say because you look Vietnamese. I was like, no, 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 I am, but I just haven't an idea. I have no idea what you're saying. So it's been kind of been it's been hard, and I'm sure you've heard adoptee stories and everything, but it can be tough because you don't feel like you're part of one place or the other because you're almost like a mixed culture going on, right? So it's
Yeah,
it's
yeah, no,
tricky.
absolutely. Yeah, no, we'll get into that. We'll get into that. But the first things first. Right away, you told me because I called you Una Min right away, and you're like, no, it's Ming. So I'm not sure where that came from, and you're probably not sure either.
Haven't a
So
clue. Have no idea.
if anybody listening right now, if you're from the north, is MINH, is that more of a Ming sound than a Min sound? Because I'm from the south, so I've always heard it as Min. But anyone, if they know, feel free to leave a comment down below. But Una Ming prefers Una Ming, so that's what I'm gonna call her. Uh,
Yeah.
so uh, adoption and all that. Yes, I completely understand. However, I'm not in your shoes, so I would never fully understand. So walk me through your life as a child growing up, for example. When was the first time you realized that you were adopted?
Well, I think it was pretty obvious because I was living in a White House. So I think I like always knew that I was different. And it was quite unusual as well because I was adopted into a home where the Irish language was very much a part of our lives. And the Irish language is a minority language here in Ireland. We have two national languages, Irish and English. And my granddad, it was myself, my granddad, and my mom who lived together, and he was a native Irish speaker. He had just top tier Irish. So to not only be not white, but also to be a kid who spoke the Irish language in a predominantly white town, small rural Ireland, it was very, very unusual. And, I was an object of curiosity for most of my life, which, is fine for a while. And then you just constantly get asked where you're really from. And it's like, okay, well, I can, it's tough because your answer isn't accepted as being the answer. It's like, yeah, but where are you really from? And it's like, I don't know. And that's what makes it even harder is because I actually don't know. Like all I literally know is about Hanoi, and I don't know anything further than that. And then in Hanoi, I mean, that's only the hospital. That doesn't actually give me any history. So growing up in the town I grew up in, where I am right now, Tralee, it's a small town. I think there was only at the time maybe I'm about maybe 18,000 people. I think there's like 25, maybe 26 now. So it's not a huge town. It's one of our bigger towns in Ireland because our population is tiny. I think it's like 5 million or something. So it was hard. And like I said, having the Irish language, like those were things that were very precious to me. So I was always seen, I suppose I always had that different aspect to it. And I hate to use this word because I know it's just the connotations are bad now, but exotic was another word that was thrown around a lot. And I hated that because all I wanted to do was be an Irish kid growing up with my friends and being like a normal kid. And I remember once when, funny enough, after we came home from Vietnam the first time when I was 8, I remember saying to mom that like I didn't feel like I belonged anywhere because like I said, like I didn't speak the language. I just felt so out of place as a kid. And you can imagine as an 8-year-old trying to battle with all this identity crisis, which, I still maybe haven't even come to terms with myself because I mean, people are kind of, they're accepting to a point, but at the end of the day, it tends to always come down to skin color, and it really sucks. But overall, though, thankfully, my childhood was very, very good, and mostly positive.
So there was no other Asian kid around.
There were we knew adoptees. I don't know if this is no fault of my mom, but I don't know if it was like she's trying to get me to connect with some culture. You're kind of like forcing. It's like if you're forced to make friends with someone who's Asian. It's kind of that was the vibe. So I did know adoptees. Now the problem was that they're much younger than me a lot of the time,
Mm-hmm.
or they were much older than me. So there was never really, because I grew up in the 90s, so it was kind of like they're still in Ireland particularly. We did have a lot of migrants coming over, like the boat people who came over here to Ireland and settled. But no one really my age, and the adoptees as well. They're just a bit too young, and I felt even in my 8 to 10-year-old self a bit more mature. Not really, but kind of.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it was just it still felt a bit too forced for me. I just wanted to be accepted as Irish. I didn't really, and for a lot of time, I did push away that Vietnamese side of me because of that crisis, I suppose, in identity.
But you have seen other, like you mentioned, boat people, Vietnamese, refugees and immigrants and stuff like that there. And do you remember if you ever saw some adults and thought like, hey, that's my people, like I want to talk to
Yeah,
them, right? I'm so curious about Vietnam.
yeah. You know what? I didn't feel that until I was an adult, so about 18, because I just was facing that turmoil inside of me because I just felt like I didn't fit in. So once I turned 18, we did go back to Vietnam. So there was like a 10-year gap between the first time and the second time. And then subsequently from that, we went 4 times. And I'm not 100% sure if I feel like I'm more Asian than I am Vietnamese. I don't know if that makes sense, but I feel like I connect to the Asian
Sure,
population as a
sure,
whole,
okay.
as opposed
Uh-huh.
to, yeah.
Right.
So I very much anytime I see an Asian person like on the big screen or something, I'm like, yes, regardless of where they're from. Yeah, it can be tricky though.
So throughout, elementary, primary, high school, and stuff like that, were there any instances where you were bullied or it was made known that you were Asian, or did you resent being Asian at times? Um,
Yeah, so my primary school, I was the only person of color in it. In my secondary school, it was a bit more diverse because we had a big influx rather of immigrants from Eastern European countries and even further abroad. So there was more diversity there. I don't think there was another Asian person in my school though, weirdly enough. I don't think there was a Southeast Asian person. I think there might have been someone from just South Asia in general. Um, I uh, in terms of racism, that was kind of something that I experienced within my school and within peers, I suppose, around me. One of them kind of bullied me pretty badly. A teacher was actually the cause of that, and that was really hard to deal with. But I think as well, because of the amount of racism that I experienced in school, outside of it, and the general ignorance, is that I created, and I'm sure it's the case for a lot of people, I created this armored shell around me, and I be snappy back at them, but in a witty sort of humorous way, as opposed to like screaming or whatever. And it kind of fueled my, I suppose, it fueled my I use passion very loosely, but it kind of my proactiveness, I suppose. I'm one of those people that I just can't sit around, and if I see an injustice, I feel like very much that I have to go and tackle something like that, if possible, where possible. Because I find as well that oftentimes social media has given us a platform to just mouth off about things but not do anything about it, whereas I like to attempt to do something if I have the power to do so.
And you're speaking of doing something, you're also an author, correct?
Yeah, I am. Yeah, I published my first book last no, last year was 2020. Can't forget that year.
Oh,
I know, right?
I'm trying. Oh.
And it's already gone crazy, and it's only
Mm.
barely into 2021. But it's kind of yeah. I published my first book in 2019. And that was a memoir, which can be often seen a bit surprising considering I was 28 when I wrote it. Um, and that kind of goes into my whole story with being adopted, growing up in Ireland here, and my experience from then until kind of where I am right now. It was a great experience, though. Kyle, I'm sure you have some book inside of you to write if you haven't already,
Yeah, no,
because I feel like
I
you've
mean,
stuck
it's,
with it.
I need to write it down before I forget because I feel like I'm losing so much of my memories. Like doing these podcast interviews with people I know, they're reminding me of things that happened. I'm like, what, really? That's how we met? I totally forgot. So I should, but I don't know. I'm just kind of a little bit lazy about writing. That used to be a big passion of mine, but yeah, maybe definitely. There's a lot of juicy details. I think
Oh,
if
yeah.
you liked my videos, I think my book would be a lot better. I think if only I filmed stuff that you guys didn't see, then I probably would be a lot bigger than I actually am now. But okay, that's enough about me. So talking about identity and culture, and so what makes an Irish person an Irish person? What sets you guys apart?
It's really tricky because, I have this perspective of being a person of color in Ireland, which is more unusual than I suppose I say average very loosely, but the average Irish person. I think what we have is something where we've experienced a lot of various things. We've experienced colonialism, we've experienced mass immigration, both of them. And yet we have still maintained such a fantastic, rich culture, which and a language. Which is often praised, but perhaps not as well known across the world. And I think that really that we are, despite being such a small nation, I mean, St. Patrick's Day, hello, like a thing that's well known globally, worldwide, one single day, that's really impressive. And the fact that you're basically going to find an Irish person in every single corner of the world. And I think you know, that's kind of a testament to how I suppose influential our history is or our people are. And uh, there's definitely a lot of now we are also a country that has a lot of issues like every single other country, but I think that we have such an intensely rich culture that just cannot be ignored. Yeah.
Right, absolutely. Irish food, for example, and the language you mentioned, which brings me to your online presence as well. You're a streamer, you're a YouTuber. I did come across some of your videos, of course, and you speak Gaelic in these videos. Can you give us
Yeah,
like a
I do.
demonstration?
So
Can you give us like a demonstration? Because I think I find it so fascinating, and I think correct me if I'm wrong. I think most people, especially Americans, probably don't know that there's another Irish language, right?
yeah, I think a lot of people don't, but to be fair to everyone, it is a minority language. So it's kind of cool that it's being pushed more to the forefront in things like Duolingo, whatever. Yeah, so I'll just do an introduction because I'll use
Sure. I want to hear. Yeah.
introduce with something else. Okay, right. So, is mis Una-Minh Craivánach, is as Kiri me agus homse na coni fé láthir I drálí, rugach me Vietnam agus optach me Kiri in Nijog Nukahen, is Sarah short me agus brimse mar creator lesh salardos. There you
Wow.
go.
Are you probably the only Vietnamese Gaelic speaker?
I'd have to confirm that.
I think you might be.
Yeah.
That might be a world record. Wow. What was the trigger that made you want to discover more of your Asian roots?
Yeah, I think I'm really not sure. I think maybe it was it sounds so I don't know, sounds like kind of a bit, I don't know. I actually can't remember, or no, I'm going to have to think about that word in English in a second. But snobby, that's the one. It kind of maybe a snobby kind of a approach, or I felt like I was more mature or something, maybe as an adult. I think definitely that you see people see things through a lens of a child and through a lens of adult, and then there's when that crossover finally happens, you're like, oh wow, I can actually think for myself now. That's a weird thing. And maybe that's when I was 18 and when I went over to Vietnam. We went on a 3 week tour. It wasn't like a soul searching tour or anything. We just did a tour from north to south, the usual tourist thing. I think I felt more of a connection with the country. And then like I said, we went back subsequently more times, and each time we spent about a month there usually. We're very biased. We spend most of our time in Hanoi because since I was born there, and we know the streets well enough. And we have friends that we know over there. So it's really nice to go back to something you're familiar with, I think. Um, and, we've done our attempts to search, sadly not successfully because I was born in Bach Hospital. And unfortunately, our understanding is that they got rid of their records after 10 years. So if I had been searching after I was 10 years old, I would have had a better chance. But we went through the Ministry of Justice as well, and that didn't work out either. So it's tough because I have no information.
Well, I'm gonna
Pretty
stop
much
you there.
no.
I'm gonna stop you there. So you are searching for your family,
Yeah.
and you were born at Bach Hospital. Um,
Hmm.
with there's no birth certificate or anything like that. What
Well,
documents do you have?
I have my birth certificates and I have the name that I was given when I was born. Apparently, I asked a Vietnamese friend of mine, and it's a super common name. So, it mightn't even be my family name.
What was it?
I actually can't remember off the top of my head, but I can send it to you.
Yeah, you
But
never
I
sent
can't.
me that. You never sent me that. I don't think.
No, 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 I didn't. No, no, no.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
because I can't remember it off the top. It's like 4 words. Um,
Yeah.
I, I think, as far as I remember, it had the words golden, blossom, and rose in it, as far as I know, because I did get it translated at one stage. So I don't know what. I
Golden
think one of,
blossom rose.
yeah, yeah,
Well, maybe
but
it's
as a
wow.
more not more like a metaphorical type thing.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
But is the name Ming in there?
No, that's not part of my name at all. No, as in that's not part of my the name that was on my birth certificate. That was part of what my mom gave me here in Ireland.
Ah, so she was inspired by that name in Vietnam.
Yes, yeah, that's it. Yeah.
But what made her what how did she end up in Vietnam and why did she adopt you?
Yeah, so my mom is a single parent from Kerry, and she always felt that she didn't need to create a duplicate of herself. She thought that there were enough children in the world who didn't have parents. And she knew a woman who had already adopted Vietnamese children, and funny enough, was her neighbor, and was able to go with her at a time from she was teaching in Toronto at the time, and she went from Toronto over to Hanoi. But yeah, it was a situation where she just felt that it was the right thing to do, because like I said, there's so many millions and millions of children who don't have homes or parents or whatever. And I was told that had I not been adopted, I would have gone straight to an orphanage. So, it was fortuitous that she met at tree, really. So yeah, I mean, I don't have any other siblings. It's just me. And sometimes I wonder what it'd be like to have siblings. But I think that ultimately, of course, I'm grateful for the whole situation, because you could get adopted into a really bad family. You never know, or you could get fostered or whatever. So that's her story. Yeah, pretty much.
When you mentioned that you would probably end up in an orphanage and if you hadn't been adopted, does that go through your mind a lot? Does it is it like a daily occurrence where you think like, "Oh, I could have been there. I could have been, not here." Do you think about that a lot?
I wouldn't say I think about it a lot. I think that I think about it more now because more recently, and Ireland has a very bad history of adoption. Not, I'm not even speaking about adoptions from abroad, but internal adoptions. And in fact, dealing with mother and baby homes, which is basically when, I mean, it's similar across the country or across the world, but basically women who weren't married or had illegitimate children or whatever, were sent to these homes and their children were taken away from them. So I think I have, when I think about what those kind of went or what could have gone through without knowing, that kind of stuff. Yeah, think about those aspects. I don't really think about it day to day though, because I think that I suppose I'm older now and I've had a lot of time to reflect. I have found as I got older, I reflect more on my birth mom simply I don't know, because I don't know the details. It's been suggested to me that she was quite young, so maybe around 19, 20 years old. And as far as I know, and again, I don't know if this is true or not, she worked while she was pregnant. She worked at near the Delta in a red brick factory, and it was my birth grandmother who possibly who was with her at the time, to guide her through the process of adoption. So I wouldn't say that I do think about the orphanage aspect because that's kind of like a hypothetical what if scenario, but I do understand that I could have had such a different life, right? It just would have been, I mean, I wouldn't have an Irish accent. It'd be just,
Right,
I'd be living in Vietnam and it'd
right,
just be
right,
super, super different.
right, right. But
Yeah.
because that you were adopted, did that make your relationship better with your mom in Ireland?
Oh, well, because it's just myself and my mom. It was just myself, my mom, my granddad. And my mom is fantastic. Like we're like this. This is what, and it's tricky though because our relationship is so close. I think I have more of a fear of something happening to her rather than I have a fear of something happening to myself. And be a case with maybe though a lot of kids who are only children in a single parent household or whatever, they feel like they must almost hold on as much as possible. But at the same time, I realize that I'm trying to start my own life. I have to, um, well, fingers crossed, hopefully getting a mortgage this year. But I have to live my own life too, and I can't be a slave to someone else to think that my happiness is pinned upon them. Um, but I cannot fault my mom in any capacity because she always made sure that I had some connection to Vietnam. And when I didn't feel like I had a connection to Vietnam, she knew to pull away and not force it upon me and just let me decide to make that decision. And she's also been super, super supportive of me searching for my birth family. Her biggest issue, and I know I mentioned this to you, Kyle, but her biggest worry would be that it would cause pain on my birth mother's side, because it could have been I'm sure it was painful, to have to give up your child. And I understand that too. And that's why we went around a non-social media route initially, to see how much we could get done. But there's only so far you can take that. So
No,
that's how it is.
yeah, no, absolutely. Let's walk through what exactly you did to find her. You mentioned it briefly, but please give me more details on exactly what you did.
Yeah, so initially we went back to the hospital a few times. We knew the director of the hospital at the time. So the first time I went back to Vietnam, I was 8. So that was around, no, I was 7 actually, 98. And we met with the director who was still the director there. Then we had a 10-year gap. This is where the tricky part comes in. And then we were kind of just going back and forth, kind of just feeling it out. As I said, it was more of a holiday than looking. The next few years, we sent official documents to the Ministry of Justice requesting information. And then when we were in Vietnam, we visited the ministry and we met with a person there who then told me that they didn't think there was much hope because I had so little information in my documents. And then we got an official letter back from the ministry saying that no, they don't have anything. Then my mom and I are still in touch with my interpreter who was there at my adoption in 91, who now lives in Belgium. And she was able to put us in contact with someone in Hanoi. And I was able to, it was really nice actually. It wasn't really a clue, but it was just a nice step. But I was able to, a few years ago, meet again the director of the hospital. And it was really nice just to be like, wow, this is a person who was there when I was born. That's pretty cool. No information. They didn't have any information either because it's a long time. It was nearly 30 years at that stage. Apart from that, I have done a DNA test. I was very reluctant to do one because I'm a journalist and my ethics in terms of giving my DNA over to company are just hard for me to swallow because I feel like it's catering towards the DNA business and not obviously it's not catering to adoptees like me. And yeah, that's pretty much it. There were some when I was around, I think it was around when I was 18 or maybe 20, there were a few journalists and documentary people who wanted to do something with me. But at the time, I just felt it wasn't the right time. And I think that was because I was too young. And I think I can look at it with a different perspective now. I think, Kyle, to be honest, the biggest barrier for me, which is the language. Because I can't think of how people are reacting to what I'm saying, what they're actually saying. How can I communicate? And I think that's really the hardest thing of even reading my documents and stuff like that. Like I do have a translated version, but I don't know how accurate that translation version is. I'm reliant on someone who I never met. So yeah, that's all we've done so far, which is that I say all, but actually that's taken years to do. So it's been quite a while, and plus it takes nearly a day for me to get to Vietnam
Yeah,
by
I'm
plane.
sure it's a long
So and it's
journey.
expensive.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
of course, of course. Well, I can help with that, and told Una-Minh that given the right opportunity and scheduling and all that, I would love to help her do a short piece and put it out there. And maybe even with this one, I can maybe post some pictures of you as a kid, and when you give me your birth name, you just post it up on Facebook and see.
Yeah.
Maybe people will share it. Who knows? And you never know when you put yourself out there on the internet. I mean, imagine all the stories that isn't covered by social media, right? Imagine all
Mhm.
the stories of people who just find a friend, for example, and the ones that are on social media. It's pretty amazing. I remember there was like this French girl who just posted a photo, and she was looking for her dad, and she went to Vietnam with really nothing. And the people in Vietnam are very eager to share and help, and that's actually a great thing. I think Vietnamese people on social media are way more helpful than, let's say, Americans. I did a story about a Vietnamese Australian man who went missing over there. He went over there on a vacation, and because he had schizophrenia, and we believe he didn't take his medication, he just disappeared. He'd vanished, and for years and years and years, the family didn't know what to do. And then I helped produce this documentary, but I can't take all credit for it because the Vietnamese people are the ones who shared it. So we posted on Facebook, and it has, I don't know, like 500,000, a million views total or something like that with Facebook and YouTube. It's just crazy, insane amounts of views and shares. And it got onto the newspapers and stuff like that. Unfortunately, we still haven't been able to find him yet, but just the power of the people's will for them to connect to a story from a complete stranger like that, it's quite touching. And I know that given the right kind of content and the right strategy, I think people will definitely share. So, and you never know. You really never know. Crazier things have happened. There was another example. I made a documentary about this man. I just met him in New Jersey. Just a random dude. He kind of invited me over, and I was in New York. I was just like, yeah, sure, okay, I'll just come over. And I was expecting to be with like the Jersey Shore people, Vietnamese from New Jersey. So my mind was like the Guidos and like this type. But he was just like a normal guy. And anyways, I made a documentary about him, and he showed me some pictures of him as a child in a refugee camp. And I placed it in the video, and two people saw themselves in that picture, two of his friends. And they reached out to me, and I connected them, and one of them just had a reunion with him in Vietnam, and another one's in California, and we're just waiting for this COVID thing to end so I could film that as well. So yeah, you never know. And I mean, it doesn't hurt to try. And I think back to what your mom in Ireland was saying about being the burden for your mom, your birth mom. Well, that's just gonna be the decision that she's gonna have to make on her own. I mean, nobody's forcing her to come out of the woodwork, but the least that you could do for her is that let her know that you're doing fine,
Hmm.
right? Let her know that you're doing well, because there has been some cases where people don't want to see their loved ones. There was this Vietnamese Danish girl who was adopted, and then she reached out to me, and I wasn't in Vietnam during this time, but I was able to put her in touch with some friends of mine in Hanoi, and they were able to help her find her mom's grave, and her father was still alive. Unfortunately, he didn't want to see her at all, and she left quite disappointed, but she tried. And
Hmm.
there was another story actually of somebody reaching out to me trying to find the brother for his mom, his uncle, and I found him. And it was actually not too difficult because this guy, I won't name the country because then people can search him up, but he's a very prominent person. And I reached out to him and he responded to me. We were so excited, and because I guess maybe he thought that the family in Vietnam wanted something from him, even though we made it clear that they just want to talk, right? This is a brother and sister separated since the war. And he just stopped replying to the emails. So, and I gave him an open line. I said, "So this is your sister's contact information. Anytime you want to do this, just feel free to reach out to them." And they don't want anything from you. They just want to meet you and all that. And I talked to the son who reached out to me, and they're just happy that to know that his uncle, her brother, is doing very well. He's doing quite well
Hmm.
actually. And so I think hopefully that would ease your mom's worry. But would you be disappointed if what are your expectations? I mean, in this.
Yeah, it's super. It's tricky. I came actually to an acceptance a long time ago that if they didn't want any contact with me, that's okay. And I know I would be sad, but I totally understand it. I think I would be more, like you said, I would just want them to know that actually it's cool. I'm doing fine. Um, and also that, uh, it's always hard for an adopted person because when someone asks you about your medical history or whatever or your background, you don't know most of the time.
Hmm.
It's just like writing on paper. There's very little information, and it's kind of almost even if they didn't want contact, there's still a bit of closure there because you know that they are around. You know that you did exist. I know that sounds really weird, but it's like it's kind of like it's finding that family tree. It's finding a bit. It's a bit of a puzzle, and the fact that if they didn't want to contact, you know, at least I can presume, I hope that they're doing okay too. That they did see it, and that's fine, and they know that I'm okay, and hopefully that they're okay too. Um, I do have there was that worry, not me, but I know I have heard of stories where people do want money or whatever, and that's like a whole different issue. For me, it really is just it'd be so cool to find someone in my family who kind of had looked that I could say, oh my god, that's my brother, that's what that kind of way, just
Sure.
to have that
Yeah.
identifying factor.
I understand. No, I've been through this a few times with people. I understand. Of course, I can't fully grasp what you're going through, but I can kind of relate. And you're
Hmm.
absolutely right because I think growing up, we have this public station called PBS, and they aired this documentary called "Daughter from Da Nang,"
Mm.
and it was kind of the first time that I realized about the separation of families because of war, because of poverty, because of various reasons in Vietnam. And that documentary told a story about a half Vietnamese, half American woman who was brought over to America, and then she returned to meet her family. Of course, she doesn't really speak the language. Was a translator, but of course, things get lost in translation, right? And it's very difficult to find somebody who is truly bilingual. You're either usually good at Vietnamese or you're much better at English, right? It's one or the other. So there's a lot of words and idioms and things like that that could be lost, expressions and stuff like that. So I feel like that led to the eventual downfall as well, where I felt that the family in Vietnam was being extra pushy, and this is spoilers for anybody, but it left a kind of a bad taste in a lot of people's minds in America because this was shown everywhere. It was repeated all the time, and I must have seen it like 20 times. And basically, what happened was everything was great, emotional at first, and then the family in Vietnam basically just flat out said, "So when are you gonna bring your mom to America? When are you gonna support her? Like, what do you expect?" And the adopted woman's like, "Well, I'm just here to visit." So and then it just drove them apart even further. And I don't know what happened to them or anything like that, but it kind of left a taste in a lot of people's minds, thinking that, oh, Vietnamese people over there just want money from you, right? So that's another kind of um, a cause, a reason for people to be hesitant about reuniting with their families. But I find that in more recently, in our generation, in the younger generation, we don't necessarily care about that, right? That's not our goal. And now that Vietnam is doing better, who knows? Chances are your mom could be really rich, really poor, or middle class. You never know. You never know
Hmm.
how life can turn instantly like that. So I applaud you for wanting to make that effort, because I know that it's easier not to. I think it's much
Yes.
easier to just continue going on with your daily life, doing your own thing, and not having to kind of worry about that. Because in a sense, I feel that correct me if I'm wrong, please, but it's kind of like this burden on your shoulders almost, right? Like this desire. And I feel like, I don't know you, but I feel like you're the type that if you want something, you're going to put all your effort towards it and you're going to do it and you're going to be successful. Because I can feel that vibe even through your emails, even though this is actually our first time FaceTiming, our first time voice calling. I already sense that. So, how much of this is like a burden on your shoulders, on your chest, just weighing it down? Like, I gotta find them, I gotta find them.
Well, first off, I'm actually very impressed that you picked that up so quickly after just that, because yeah, you're right. I am a person, if I feel that I can do something and I have the power to do something, I very much do not have the time to be sitting around and doing nothing. I have to go full throttle to it because I feel like we're on this planet once. That's kind of how I kind of see it. And that, I don't want to be remembered for how many followers I had. I want to be remembered for something that I've created or have impacted or helped or whatever. And I'm sure it's kind of like for you too, ultimately you're helping people reach a part of themselves that they wouldn't be able to do. It isn't possible without your influence, which is phenomenally good. I think that you're right, though. There is this kind of, it just sits there. And sometimes you see it, like I mentioned, that report came out today about Ireland's adoption issues. I mean, that even though it had nothing to do with me, it reminds me always, of course, it's going to remind me of my own adoption, and it's going to affect other adoptees too in different ways. Um, I think it's sometimes when it happens the most, it's usually, unfortunately, the reminder. What pushes me forward is unfortunately the amount of racism that I experience, which is a lot. Particularly in Ireland, where they often believe that racism is not an issue, which is really irritating because I'm Irish as well, you know. And they kind of still treat people like me, despite me being here at 6 weeks old. They treat me as new Irish, and it's very frustrating because a lot of the people who I experience racism from are younger than me. So I've actually been in Ireland longer than, a physical Irish person longer than they have. And it's just really irritating but that is the thing that spurs me to kind of lock down my identity, figure out my family situation, and just have all that, because I do feel that if I did nothing, you know, if something happened to me and I was at the end of my days, hopefully at an old age, and then I was thinking back, going, oh, wouldn't it have been great if I had tried to look for my birth family? I would be more annoyed at myself than, even if I don't get anything out of the, like, if nothing happens of this, well, at least I tried. And I'm very thankful to anyone who helps me to do such a thing. So that's kind of how I look at life these days, because I like I said, I feel like we have only so much time, so we might as well make the most of it, really.
You mentioned that you didn't experience much bullying in school, but you said racism affects you.
Mm,
How so?
yeah. Well, the racism thing. The racism has been when I moved up. So I went to university in Dublin, which is like our biggest, our capital city here in Ireland. And it's funny, I only experienced racism in my hometown, which I said was a predominantly white town, maybe a handful of times. In Dublin, I nearly experienced it pretty much on a weekly basis or even a daily basis, depending on where I was walking around, which sucks because it's such a multicultural city. This is why it gets weird. This is the
Uh-huh.
very strange thing about Ireland. Not only that, is that Ireland has such a history of Irish people emigrating to other countries. It makes no sense that we're racist to other people at all, because we've had to do the exact same thing with people coming into, you know what I mean, to integrate into their society. Um, so I've experienced all that. Usually they bring up that I'm clearly not Irish enough because I don't have red hair and I don't have freckles or some BS like that, which makes no sense whatsoever. Um, and you know, it's hard because then people think that I'm trying too hard. Like I'm trying too hard with the Irish language. I'm trying too hard to do certain very Irish things where I'm not. This is just how I grew up. Like I said, my granddad was a native Irish speaker. He spoke to me in Irish. I didn't just pick this just for the I was going to use an Irish idiom there, but um, I didn't just randomly pick up Irish. It was part of my life. It was always part of my identity. Um, so and then in 2013, an incident that actually I wrote about, kind of, which was the core of my book in one way, is that I was on a very public street. I was spat at, and I was like, and I was a racial slur was thrown in my direction. It was by a group of young people. And what really annoyed me about that day was that it wasn't the racism that annoyed me, even though that was very frustrating. It was the fact that no one helped me. It was the bystander effect. And this was a really busy street in Dublin. And it was really disheartening because there was a person, a guy in a taxi right in front of me across the street. And when I looked at in his eyes to connect, like, oh my God, look, can you see what just happened? He looked away. And it fueled my anger. And that's how I kind of got into social activism and everything like that. But um, I, it's a thing where, like you said, if I see something, I have to go get it. For me, it's a lot of times it's injustice. I actually sit on the Department of Justice Anti-Racism Committee here in Ireland, because I feel if I can change something somehow, then I'll do it. But I think it just doesn't make sense in Ireland, in particular, that we would have racism in our society given our history.
So
Yeah.
even though they can hear the way you speak, your dialect, your tone, your
Hmm.
accent, so it's much more of a physical racism,
Yes,
right? And
very
not
much.
just subtle,
Yep.
not just subtle. It's like you've experienced direct racism like that, and
Hmm.
stares and stuff like that.
Yeah, I get thrown slurs. Like I said, I was attacked. I mean, if you have, it's really hard because I'm not lucky, but because I have an Irish accent on the phone, right? You wouldn't know what I look like, so that's fine. But for, say, someone else who is Asian and they have a slight accent, like not fully Irish accent, but it's just a slight accent, someone will pick up on that instantly and be like, ah, I knew you weren't Irish, or something like that. And they just nitpick that tiny mispronunciation or whatever. And it really sucks because you don't know how long that person's been here, you don't know their story, you don't know how many times they've been asked where they're really from. And just all of that. It's a person I work with on the committee, actually, Shane O'Curry. He's actually the director of the Irish Network Against Racism, but he said he described it so well because he called it the drip drip effect. Basically, if you're getting the same comment again and again and again about where you're from, understandably the person is going to get really exhausted and irritable of the whole situation. But yet if I confront that irritability, people say that I'm not being a nice person for confronting that because they're just curious, you know, and they kind of try and spin it back on you. And yeah, it's tricky. I think, for adopted people, it's a tiny bit harder because, like I said before, we're dealing with not being one or the other fully. Um, that we're trying to justify being more Irish or more Vietnamese or more, so it's a constant battle emotionally and mentally.
So would you say that being Asian in Ireland means that it's way more difficult for you to get a job?
No, no, I don't think I've thankfully never had that issue. Uh, but again, this is really, I can't speak for the Asian community because I grew up Irish. So
Mm,
I don't know what the
mm,
case is
I
for
see.
actual people who came over here. I know, though, because I wrote a report for this for university, there has been a huge increase of racism against Asian people across the world, but particularly in Ireland during COVID-19. And that's for obvious
Uh,
reasons. Um, so
uh,
I would imagine that it's they're finding it much more difficult now. Even our best stores here in Ireland, some of the biggest Asian stores, people wouldn't be going into them and that kind of stuff. They're thankfully doing better now, but it's just kind of that ignorance that was fueled by the pandemic and everything like that.
What are some things that your committee is doing to help this issue in Ireland?
In terms of racism, we have a lot of things that are on our plates. The meetings that we have are very frequent, and it is a great hope. There is currently no hate crime legislation in Ireland. It's a massive
Wow,
issue.
there's no hate
Yeah.
crime.
Mm-mm.
Wow, I did not know that. Wow.
Um, there
Wow.
are laws that can work with hate crime, but this is the issue, right? So, it is our hope to create a structure in to work towards creating this framework. Like I said, so there are laws that can contribute to building up a hate crime case, but there are no official ones. So that's kind of the main work of the committee. Also to highlight the pockets of communities. Obviously, we all our committee is very, very diverse too, which is really wonderful. And it's people think that committees don't work because they often imagine committees just sitting around doing nothing all day and not contemplate things. But I they are hardcore. The ones that we sit in are there's a lot going on, and I can't actually talk about exactly what I do on it. But like I said, we're working towards hopefully legislation, and it's the people on our committee are who have experienced racism. They know, we know, and the thing is people know it exists. Everyone knows that racism exists. Now, whether they choose to believe it exists within the country is a different story, but they know what it is. You ask them what racism is, they know what it is. But it's kind of like we're trying to get past the stage where we have to justify this is racism, but what can we do as a framework to actually combat this? And I think that's more important when it comes to committee stuff, in my opinion. It's tough though because you're dealing with because I'm a more public facing person and people know that I sit on this committee in Ireland. You are automatically the subject of more hate from trolls because not everyone on the committee is more public facing. So it's kind of it's a very much I'll do it for the greater good, but it is hard. But I think that if anyone ever has to potentially change something in the world, absolutely go for it because you're just going to regret it otherwise if you don't do something about it or you miss up on opportunities like that. Yeah.
Do
So
you think that racism is because of lack of education or is it an economic issue? What's the root of it?
you know, it certainly does to a certain extent have to do with lack of education because I find there is a line between racism and ignorance, right? Because if you're ignorant and someone corrects you and then you realize, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't know about that, now I can rectify that, that's good. That's not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily you coming from a bad place. But if you're corrected about something ignorant, you're like, well, that's how I learned it, I'm not changing my mind, then that's kind of very much a different approach to how to counteract racism or ignorance for that. When it comes to actual racism, it's I think it begins at home. I mean, where do you learn things? Probably the foundation at home usually, or schools, or your peers, or what your own moral values. There's obviously also fear. I know when we had our influx of Eastern European people, there was a lot of racism because they thought that the tagline was very much they're coming over and taking our jobs, which didn't make any sense at all because, again, we Irish people have gone to many different countries and had to integrate. So there is an unwarranted fear there. Like you said, economics comes into play and just general education. I think it is very much not something that one person can tackle. And I know you probably see this on social media. I don't know if you're on TikTok or not, Kyle, are you?
No, I'm
Uh,
not. I'm not that. I'm not.
it's
I'm
a
too old for
minefield.
that. Yeah, I'm too
Really
old,
not.
and yeah, I'm too old. Well, okay, I feel old whenever I stay away from TikTok. I'm pretty sure I registered an account to just to have the username, but I don't think I'll post anything on there. It just reminds me of how I can't move like that. My joints really ache, and then secondly, it's just like I don't know. I feel very like I like long form stuff. The short form stuff
That's fair.
that's too much for me. Yeah. So what about it?
So I actually think your content will be really good on TikTok. But anyway, but yeah, I joined it at March, and what I really loved about it, funny enough, is that I can connect to because the algorithm is so smart, probably suspiciously smart. I connect with all these Asian people, and it really feels nice because, I mentioned this before, but I do feel more of a connection with Asian people than solely Vietnamese people. Although I do get excited when I see a Vietnamese person as well. And it's really cool because it's created this outlet to me. But one thing that Asians have been doing recently is tackling the amount of racism that they experience through another site, Omegle, and they've uploaded to TikTok, which I think is an interesting premise to do. They try and kind of hunt down a person to, I suppose, expose them. And there's a lot to be said for things like witch hunts, cancel culture, and all that jazz. But I think it's interesting that Asian people have had to go down this route because they don't feel like they're being heard enough. But that's a complete aside. I still think that your content would be pretty good on TikTok though. But I totally understand, like, long form content is your jam and you're really good at it. So
yeah, my brain doesn't
don't be
work
surprised
like
if you see it.
No, my brain doesn't work like that. Like somebody asked me like, hey, can you make like a 30-second clip for me? I'm like, I want to, but I tried, but I don't know. TikTok's like what, 15 seconds or something like that. Oh,
60 seconds.
oh, 60 seconds. Oh, really? TikTok is 60 seconds?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that might be doable.
Yeah.
Nah, but I'm okay. I got other stuff to do. I'm run, but I'm not that run. Oh, sorry. Run means run is how it's. I actually wanted to. I think I'm gonna name this podcast Run because run is kind of like it just basically means like free, like you have free time, right? But
right.
It's also set it in kind of like a funny, sad way. Like, for example, if somebody were to say something like, oh, like I just organize all of my Lego pieces by color. And you're something like, man, you're so run, like you're kind of judging them, but not harshly or anything like that.
Is it sort of like being extra? Is that the kind of vibe?
Yes, but extra, but with like free time, I think. Like it's just like a comeback. Like if somebody's so proud of something, right? You can say like, oh, like, yeah, I just baked this beautiful cake, man. It's so amazing. I put so much effort. And the other person are like, yeah, but that's just because you're so run, you got nothing else to do. Yeah, kind of like that. Like you're so free, you got no life. You got no life, nothing else to do. So that's why I wanted to name it Run, this podcast, because everybody who's talking to me right now because of COVID, they're just so run or else they wouldn't talk to me, right? That's the thing. And I wouldn't be doing this unless I was so run as well. If I had a magic wand and I can grant you this wish, how would you imagine a potential reunion with your family in Vietnam would be?
Oh, wow, that's a big question. I think we kind of touched upon it, but the just perspective of letting them know that I'm okay is the biggest thing, whether that be on person or whatever situation. If it's online, if they don't want to physically meet, or even if it's an email or a message or whatever. If it was the most magical.
Yeah, that's most magical. Yeah, I have a magic wand. Remember? Yeah, come on, reach.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to meet my birth mother. I would of course love to meet my birth father too, but she's the one who carried me, and I would not be here without her. So to me, the ultimate dream will be to meet her. And I don't know, this sounds really weird, but like I mentioned this before about not knowing facial traits of if I have siblings or not. Wouldn't it be amazing if I could just like put my hands on her face and just to see if we looked alike, or what kind of, is it our eyes that look similar, is it our mouth, is it our face, and I think, oh my god, I'm getting kind of emotional, Kyle.
Sorry.
I just think that no, I just never had thought about that before, and yeah, I think that would be enough, I think so.
Because you're gonna meet, but then what?
Yeah, and that's the hard thing too. And then what?
Right. So all you want to do is just put your hand on her face. Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
that's great.
Much it. That's all I want.
No, that's amazing. I understand. I understand the the need to find yourself and your origins, like your roots and like your family, your blood. I get it. Like I'm no, I mean for somebody being like so close, like a mother. Yeah, like here I am wanting to reach out to like second and third cousins and like going places to meet them and like my mom's half family and that kind of stuff. But I can't even imagine how your desires for this. Actually, I can, because you reached out to a complete stranger in me and all that, and I would really love to help you. I mean, I think that's probably one of the most fulfilling things in my life. I'm not able to do YouTube as a career, um, but uh, on occasion I get to help a lot of people, and I think the most important thing to take away from all this in years looking back is I get to meet interesting people like yourself, because if I never put myself out there, I wouldn't have this luxury. I'm going to call this experience and getting to know you and talking to you and sharing your story as a luxury for me, because this is something money cannot buy, and this is something that sorry, I'm getting all philosophical, but fate and it, looking back in my life, it's always been kind of like certain moments trigger a whole slew of other things. And that's why I'm very appreciative of the fact that not only did you watch, but you also took the time to reach out too. So yeah, sometimes you just have to put yourself out there, and I hope that in the near future, when we're able to do something or just to put it out there, and I hope people will share this, and I hope you'll have some peace, some yeah. But I really admire I'm sure your life has been a struggle at times, and I'm sure there's good times too, but I'm sure that it hasn't been easy. So I really respect that. I really respect the hardships of more or less our people, the Vietnamese, and just may it be through adoption or refugees or just assimilating to a new place or racism or anything like that, and subsequently adoptions now. So I really respect and admire your work and your life and everything that you've told us today. It's been very enlightening. So thank you for agreeing to this, and thank you for coming on. And if anybody wants to reach out to Una-Minh or follow her, everything will be linked in the description down below. Is there anything else? Any last thoughts? Anything you'd like to say to a potentially new audience
Oh,
out there?
well, this is because it's kind of been, I don't know, I do feel lucky to have connected with you, Carl, to be honest, because you were so grateful as well in just getting back to me straight away with your email address. And I was like, okay, wow, that's pretty cool. Because, often you reach out to people and they might think that you're just being, what is this person up to? What do they want? So, but I found that from watching your content, I was like, no, this guy actually really cares about the people he meets. And I think that's really incredible because you don't see that a lot. I find in YouTube, some content creators, it's clearly mostly about them. Whereas I find that with your content, it's this nice, I suppose, marriage between your own stuff and their stuff. But
It's still
I
mostly
don't
about
know.
me. Still mostly about me.
No, it is,
51%.
but it's
51% me. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
oh no, don't sell yourself short though, because you've created this fantastic community. Because I can see from your comment sections, man, like the stuff that people want to talk to you about, they want to hear about you, of course, and also just the people that you've met. So that's pretty cool.
I
I love
think they
that.
want to. I think they want to see the girls that I've met more than they want to see me. To be honest, but that's okay. That's okay. If I can give somebody a platform, and more importantly, I love sharing other people's stories and connecting people, and just being able to show the world that, hey, look, we're Vietnamese and we can do anything else that anybody else can do. So I like that. I like showing the modern aspects like that, and for people to be a little bit less ignorant, because I used to be very ignorant about that, right? I didn't know that there were Vietnamese people not in America. I didn't know about Canada, Canadian Vietnamese until very recently. So yeah, no, thank you for saying that.
Oh, thanks. I'm great.
Oh, that was it.
No,
That was it?
no, I'm just thinking, no, because I just feel like there's so much to reflect on. I feel like I don't know. I feel like I know you in this kind of weird sort of way. Like I don't know you. This is
Well, I
the
want you to
thing.
be less polite too. I think I wrote that in the email. Like, stop being so polite. Like, like
Yeah.
maybe it's an
No,
Irish thing. I don't know. No, but for me,
no, it's a journalism.
for me, I feel like I can sense people's vibes quite easily. Just not always, but from the text, from you putting yourself out there, and me just almost skimming through your content, checking out some of the links at the end of the email and stuff like that. I had a sense, and the reason why I responded to you right away was that, well, first, I'm run these days, and the second thing is I believed in how genuine you were and are. So I knew right away that I wanted to help you. I knew that you were serious about it. And I felt that trust right away. And so I feel like I know you too. So,
That's awesome. No, yeah, because you know what? Maybe it is because that I like to call it the Asian persuasion. Just the fact that we have that shared link, I guess, between things. Because I know that if you had been, to be honest, if you had been just some white dude, I probably wouldn't have reached out so honestly and been like, yeah, here's my entire story. Seriously.
I think what it is because I've had all this experience with the Vietnamese diaspora, and I've been to so
Mhm.
many countries and have spent time with Vietnamese from all over, and to understand their struggles and hardships, and the fact that I've been to Ireland myself, naturally,
Mhm.
when you wrote me, I already placed you in this elevated form of like, whoa, Vietnamese, Irish, wow, that's so cool. That is so freaking cool, right? Because I'm fascinated about the culture and about your experience. And not everybody is like that. I think the typical like young Vietnamese American, they'll be like, oh, okay, that's cool, But for me, and I think a lot of my audience, we just care more about that, to hear the stories and stuff like that. And that's why I'm happy that you came on to tell your story too, because if we don't tell it, if we don't, I actually have a degree in an undergrad degree in history, so if we don't keep the stories, we don't record it, orally or visually or whatever, written wise, it's gonna be lost forever. And the time now, because our children's generation and their generation, they might not go through the same things that we went through. And so I feel like now is the time for a lot of Asian creators to be more open and speak up and share their own experiences, even if they think it's boring, because everybody has a story. And I think your story is definitely not boring. Your story is phenomenal. I mean, it's just something so, I don't know. I mean, you live this life, so it's not that special to you. But I still think that for me, it's cool to connect with somebody who's a Vietnamese person living in Ireland, who is Irish, who grew up Irish, who is Irish. I feel for vice versa, I'm not that special because there's like millions of me. There's millions of Vietnamese people, in little Saigon in Southern California. So, but thank you again for coming on. I really, really appreciate it. And
Yeah,
yeah, and then best of luck with everything. And I'm sure we'll keep in contact and all that.
absolutely, Kyle. Yeah, for sure. Definitely.
Okay. Well, thank you everybody for watching. Again, feel free to follow Una-Minh in the description down below. Lots of links for sure. Lots of great content, especially if you can speak or understand Gaelic. I think you'll have a great time. Uh, Thank you again, everybody. Feel free to leave comments down below, subscribe, comment, whatever, share, all that good stuff. See, you're right. I'm not a good YouTuber. I find it awkward still saying that. When I did it often, when I was consistent, it came out naturally, right? But it's just, even now, I haven't done stuff in a while. It's just kind of like I don't have a thing yet. But anyways, yeah, comment, share. I don't even tell people to hit the bell notification. So I should really tell people that. Subscribe and enable notifications too. Okay, well, have a great night over there. Yeah, well, maybe we'll talk again soon.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely.
Okay, take care. Bye.
Cool. Thanks so much, Kyle. I really
Yeah,
appreciate
cool.
it.